I've never told anyone this, not in full. But I need to get it out. I was the kind of husband people say don't let him go about. Not to brag, just honest. I cooked when she worked late, I held her when she cried, I supported every single dream she ever dared to speak aloud. I never even looked at another woman. Not once. And when she said she wanted to go back to school at 32, I was the one who stayed up editing her essays and brewing coffee for her through finals. Her name was Leslie. And for 12 years I thought we were building something real. We had a small house just outside Denver. Nothing flashy, but it was ours. Every wall held stories, our wedding photo in the hallway, the crack near the kitchen sink from when we tried to fix the plumbing together and failed miserably. But I loved those imperfections. They were us. About a year ago, I started noticing the distance. You know what I mean, the emotional kind. She still came home, still kissed me on the cheek, still asked me how my day was, but there was a delay in her eyes, like her soul was buffering. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Her classes were intense and she was working part-time. So I doubled down, I made more dinners, cleaned more often, booked a surprise weekend getaway in Aspen. But nothing changed. One evening I walked in on her on the phone. She didn't hear me come in. Her voice was soft, hushed, like she was 13 again and sneaking out past curfew. I didn't hear everything, but I caught one word. Love? Not in the platonic way. In the way that stabs you in the chest when it doesn't belong to you. I stood there quiet, not moving. Just watching her lean against the kitchen counter with that slight smile she hadn't given me in months. And when she finally saw me standing in the doorway, her face drained of color so fast I thought she was going to faint. She hung up. Fast. Who was that? I asked, my voice somehow steady. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said, a friend. But her eyes told the truth. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I just nodded and walked to the bedroom. That night, I barely slept. She did, like a rock. Like nothing had happened. I laid there and stared at the ceiling fan, wondering how long she'd been living two lives. The next day, I left work early and drove to her campus. I parked far enough so she wouldn't see me, waited until her last class ended, and watched her exit the building. That's when I saw him. He was waiting near a bench with a cup of coffee in each hand, smiling like he'd won something. She didn't look guilty. She looked excited. She bounced up to him, took the cup, and kissed his cheek. Not just a hello kiss. A kiss. The kind that says, you're the one I've been thinking about all day. I didn't confront them. I didn't even cry. I drove home in silence and sat in the car for 2 hours. When she came home that evening, I was still in the driveway. She tapped on the window and asked if everything was okay. I said, you tell me. And just like that, her fake world started to crumble. She cried. She said it was a mistake. That it had just happened. That it wasn't serious. But that man's smile, the way he touched her hair, the look in her eyes, those were not the signs of a mistake. That was choice. Intentional. Intimate. Rehearsed. Still, I didn't throw her out. Why? Because I needed to see how far she'd go. I needed to know whether she'd choose comfort and familiarity or him. And a week later, she made her choice. She packed a small suitcase, kissed me on the forehead like a goodbye from a nurse, and said, I think I need to see what this is. No apology. No fight. No shame. Just like that. The woman I gave everything to, my love, my trust, my time, walked out of our house and into someone else's arms as if I were nothing more than a pit stop on the way to her real life. And here's the thing, I let her go. Not because I was weak, but because I was ready to see who she'd become without me. Because I knew one day she'd come back. And when she did, she'd return with nothing but regret. After she left, the silence in the house became something else entirely. It wasn't just quiet, it was empty. Her absence wasn't a gap. It was a void. One that swallowed everything, the smell of her shampoo on the pillows, the little humming sounds she made when brushing her teeth, the sound of her heels clicking through the hallway. I didn't chase her. I didn't call or text or ask mutual friends for updates. I simply let it happen. There was something twistedly powerful about watching someone walk away and resisting the urge to stop them. Like standing still in a hurricane and refusing to flinch. At first, I kept myself busy. I repainted the garage, sorted through old boxes, even fixed that squeaky stair she'd always complained about. But no matter what I did, I kept hearing the echo of her voice in every room. Her laughter had been replaced by a ghost I couldn't evict. 3 weeks passed. Then 4. I saw her once briefly. I was walking out of the grocery store and there she was across the street in the passenger seat of his car. Sunglasses on, head tilted back, sipping from an iced coffee. She looked free. And that stung in a way I didn't expect. Not because she was happy, but because she didn't even look like someone who'd left a marriage. There was no guilt in her face. No heaviness. She looked like a woman who'd just gotten a promotion, not someone who'd torn a decade-long commitment in half. That night, I poured myself a glass of scotch and did something dangerous. I looked through old photos. Our wedding day. Her in that pale satin dress, smiling like she knew she had the world in her hands. Her birthday 4 years ago when I surprised her with a weekend trip to San Diego. That stupid Christmas photo where I was wearing reindeer antlers and she had cookie dough on her nose. And in every single photo I saw it, I was all in. And she wasn't. Not really. The truth was, the signs had been there for years. The way she dodged deep conversations. The way her excitement faded whenever things got hard. She never wanted to grow through struggle. She wanted ease. Constant ease. And when things stopped being effortless, she quietly started packing her emotional bags long before the physical ones. Then something happened. One night, around 2 a.m. I got a text. "Can we talk?" Just that. I stared at it for 10 minutes. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't type. I didn't want to be that man, the one who jumps at breadcrumbs. But curiosity is a hell of a thing. So I replied, "What for?" She answered within seconds. "I don't think this is what I wanted." I wanted to scream. To throw the phone across the room. Now she was unsure? After she'd taken that suitcase and stepped into someone else's bed like it was the final scene of a rom-com? But I didn't say any of that. I left her on read. For 3 days. On the 4th day, I got a knock at the door. It was her. Hair disheveled, mascara smudged, and eyes I barely recognized. She looked like a woman who had made a wish and watched it blow up in her hands. "Can I come in?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I didn't move. "I just want to talk," she pleaded. I let her in, not because I wanted her back, but because I needed to hear it. I needed the truth. She sat on the edge of the couch like a stranger visiting an old crime scene. "I thought he was everything you weren't," she started. I raised an eyebrow. "He was spontaneous. Fun. Said all the right things. Made me feel like I was 25 again. I thought I'd been missing something this whole time, but once I had it." Her voice cracked. It felt fake. Like a fantasy that started to rot the second reality showed up. "He doesn't care about anything real. He doesn't know how to be still. He doesn't sit and listen when I cry. He doesn't know me. Not the way you do." That part stung more than I expected. "You weren't missing something," I said coldly. "You were bored. And instead of working through that with the man who loved you, you ran toward the first guy who made you feel like a movie character." She didn't deny it. Just nodded. And whispered the word that told me everything I needed to know. "I'm sorry. But sometimes sorry doesn't stitch a wound, it just reminds you where it hurts." That night ended without resolution. I didn't take her back. I didn't ask her to leave either. We sat in silence for hours, the space between us wider than ever. And that's when I realized this wasn't the end of her fall. She had more crashing left to do. And I was going to watch it from a distance. Because the regret she carried now? It was only the beginning. After that night, I didn't hear from Leslie for almost a week. She didn't call. She didn't text. But I knew she was hovering nearby, emotionally and physically. I could feel it. Like a storm that had passed but was still circling overhead, threatening to return. I wasn't sure what I expected to feel, maybe rage, maybe relief, but instead I felt clarity. That kind of cold, sharp clarity that comes after betrayal when the heart finally stops pleading and the brain starts thinking. I began to realize that the version of Leslie I had loved didn't exist anymore if she ever had. The next encounter came unexpectedly. I was at my friend Calvin's birthday barbecue, standing by the grill, laughing with people I hadn't seen in months, when I noticed a familiar silhouette near the back fence. It was Leslie. Alone. Watching. She hadn't been invited. She just showed up. I didn't walk over. I let her feel the weight of that distance. Eventually, she approached. "You're different," she said. "I should be," I replied. She looked around at the group, people who had once called her family too. But now they didn't even wave. Calvin's wife barely looked at her. Leslie wasn't just an ex-wife in the making. She was a traitor in her own town. "I miss this," she muttered, motioning to the people, the yard, the warmth. "I miss you." I didn't respond. Instead, I turned and walked away. For the first time, I was the one leaving the conversation. Later that night, she messaged me again. This time, it wasn't poetic or vague. It was desperate. "He's not who I thought he was. I feel like a stranger to myself. I want to come home." Home. That word hit differently now. Because the place she wanted to return to no longer existed. Not really. I had spent the last month purging every trace of her. I threw away old notes, packed up framed photos, boxed her leftover clothes and dropped them at her mother's doorstep. I even replaced the couch, the one where she'd once curled up on snowy nights in my sweatshirt. It was all gone. But the most significant change? Me. I wasn't the man she left. I wasn't waiting by the window, mourning her silhouette. I had crossed a bridge she didn't even see burning behind me. Still, curiosity lingered. So I offered her a meeting. Neutral ground. Public. I suggested a small cafe on the edge of town, the one we used to go to before she got too busy to care. When she walked in, she looked smaller. Not physically, but spiritually. Her confidence, that effortless sway in her step, it was gone. What replaced it was a woman trying to put herself back together with pieces that didn't fit anymore. I keep thinking about our mornings, she said, fingers trembling on the coffee cup. You always made breakfast. Even when I didn't say thank you. You kissed me goodbye at the door like it was a ritual. And I never realized how much that meant until someone else didn't? I cut in. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? She didn't leave because I lacked something. She left because she thought there was more out there. Something shinier, sexier, easier. But what she found was a hollow man with temporary charm and no depth. Someone who loved her body but never saw her soul. Someone who didn't care how she took her coffee or that she hummed off-key while folding laundry. She left warmth for warmth's illusion, and now she wanted to crawl back. Please, she said, reaching across the table. I know I messed up, but people change. Yes, I said, leaning back. They do. I did. Her face crumbled. So that's it. I looked her dead in the eye. No, that's you. I'm just starting. She cried. Right there in the middle of that cafe, mascara streaking down her cheeks while I sat still, feeling absolutely nothing. Not hate, not love, just a strange kind of peace. But she wasn't done yet. The next day, she made her biggest move. She showed up to my house with suitcases. Not metaphorical ones. Literal. She had packed everything and was standing on my porch like a woman coming home from war. But what she didn't realize was that while she was busy playing with her new fantasy, I had changed the locks. She rang the bell. I answered, and when she saw my expression, she knew. This isn't your home anymore, Leslie. You're really doing this? She whispered. No, I said. You did this. And I shut the door. Behind her, across the street, I saw the neighbor's dog barking. Wind rustled the trees. It was just a regular Tuesday. And yet, everything had changed. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and smiled for the first time in weeks. Because for the first time, I wasn't mourning what I lost. I was realizing what I escaped. A week after I closed the door on Leslie, something strange started happening. I began receiving messages, not from her, but from people connected to her orbit. Her cousin messaged me on Facebook saying, "She's not doing well." An old mutual friend texted, "Whatever happened, man? She looks like she's barely holding on." I didn't respond, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood that her destruction wasn't my burden anymore. Then, late one Friday night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message, it was her. But she wasn't crying. She was furious. "Thanks for making me look like a fool in front of everyone," her voice hissed. "You've told people lies about me, that I ran off with some stranger, that I cheated. You know it wasn't like that." I just stared at the phone. That voice, once soft and loving, was now hollow, defensive, venomous. It reminded me of a cornered animal, desperate and dangerous. What she didn't know was that I hadn't told anyone anything. Not even my closest friends knew the full story. They had drawn their own conclusions from her absence, from the looks she got when she showed up at that barbecue, and from the fact that I had quietly rebuilt my life without her. I didn't need to destroy her reputation. She was doing that all by herself. A few days later, I bumped into her old classmate at a coffee shop, Rachel, a woman I barely knew. But she recognized me instantly. "You were with Leslie, right?" she asked gently. I nodded, unsure where it was going. She dropped out. "Last month." My eyebrows lifted. "She did." Rachel nodded. She started missing classes. Said she was going through something. The guy she left you for. She lowered her voice. He dumped her. Left her for some 20-something. Cold. Just like that. I felt nothing. Not vindication. Not joy. Just an odd calmness, like the universe had pressed rewind on a cassette I never wanted to play again. When I got back home, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not to her, but to myself. I made a list. A brutally honest list titled, What She Taught Me by Leaving. It included things like, never give all of yourself to someone who hasn't proven they'll protect it. Love isn't measured by grand gestures, it's measured by who stays when everything gets hard. And the hardest one to admit, sometimes the person you love most is the one holding the knife. I saved the list and shut the laptop. That night I cooked dinner for myself. No takeout. No frozen pizza. I made grilled salmon with garlic, mashed potatoes, and asparagus. It wasn't about the food, it was about reclaiming my routine. Reclaiming me. As I sat down at the table alone, I realized something important. Leslie didn't just leave me for someone else. She left herself too. And when she came back, thinking she could slot herself back into a life she no longer fit, she finally understood this time I was the one who had outgrown her. It had been 2 months since I last saw her. The nights had become quieter, my sleep deeper. No more late-night texts. No more ghosts in the hallway. But peace has a way of making you lower your guard. That Tuesday, I came home from work to find a small brown package waiting on my doorstep. No return label. No note. Just my name, written in her handwriting, tight, familiar, unmistakable. For a second, I stood there frozen. I debated throwing it away, setting it on fire, leaving it on someone else's porch and pretending I never saw it. But curiosity is the devil's whisper. I took it inside, placed it on the kitchen counter, and stared at it while sipping a glass of water. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Eventually, I gave in and opened it. Inside was a flash drive and a photo. The photo was old, one of us on our honeymoon in Maine, standing barefoot in the sand, smiling like idiots. She had drawn a small heart on the back of the picture with a message scribbled beneath it. I was happiest before I became someone else. I inserted the flash drive into my laptop, half expecting a virus or some kind of emotional trap. What I found instead was a video. A single video file named For You. It started shaky, filmed in a car. Her car. She looked tired. No makeup. Eyes red. Voice soft. I don't know if you'll ever watch this, she said, eyes glancing between the camera and the road. But I need to say it even if you never respond. She went on to talk about the man she left me for. How the excitement faded within weeks. How he made her feel cheap. Disposable. How she started realizing that I wasn't the problem in our marriage, she was. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. He told me I was boring. That I'd aged too fast. That I wasn't worth the mess I came with. He said I should have stayed with the guy who clearly worshipped me because he never would. Her voice broke after that. She tried to hold it together. Failed. I didn't just lose a marriage. I lost the one person who saw me even when I was ugly inside. You gave me everything, and I traded it for someone who didn't even remember my middle name. She turned off the camera. That was it. I sat there for a long time. Not because I felt sympathy, but because it finally hit me she wasn't coming back to reclaim love. She was crawling back to escape loneliness. And I wasn't a shelter anymore. The package remained on the counter for a few days before I finally threw it out. The video? Deleted. Not out of anger, but because holding on to it would have been like storing ashes and hoping for a fire. That chapter was done. I wasn't the same man anymore. But what she didn't realize was that I was just getting started. One ordinary Thursday evening, while I was locking up the shop I'd recently opened, a small used book place downtown, I got a message on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. No profile picture. Just a name, Matt_speaks_truth. It said, "You don't know me, but I know who she really is. You need to see this." I hesitated. Spam? A prank? I almost ignored it. But my gut told me something was off. I replied cautiously. "What is this about?" A minute later, a photo came through. It showed Leslie sitting at a bar years ago. Her hair was shorter. Her dress unfamiliar, but unmistakably her. And she wasn't alone. Next to her was the same man she eventually left me for. But here's the kicker, the timestamp was from 2 years before our marriage ended. Meaning, their little fling didn't just happen. It had history. My hands went cold. I stared at the photo, reading the date over and over. It didn't make sense. Back then, she was telling me she needed space to grow. She had gone on weekend yoga retreats. She claimed she was mentoring someone. I even remember her calling me one night crying, saying she felt overwhelmed with school and needed clarity. That weekend? Turns out she was in Vegas with him. I messaged the account back. Who are you? The reply came fast. Let's just say I used to be his friend. I saw what they did to you. I saw how she lied about you when she was with him. She called you weak, said you'd never leave. She used to laugh about how easy it was to twist you around. I felt like I was reading someone else's nightmare. But it was mine. The anonymous user sent more. Screenshots of texts. A photo of them kissing behind a parking garage. Even a blurry clip of them in what looked like a hotel hallway, arms wrapped around each other, completely unaware of the camera. And the most painful one? A screenshot of a message he had sent to the mystery man. She'll never leave him unless I make her feel like I might disappear. Watch. I've got her trained. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Everything I'd told myself to move on, the justifications I gave her, the belief that she was confused, momentarily lost, human, was shattered. It hadn't been a moment of weakness. It was a long, intentional game. And I had been the pawn. But something changed in me that night. I didn't spiral. I didn't break down. I got cold. Focused. Because now I knew. Her return wasn't out of regret. It was out of failure. She didn't run back to me because she realized what I was worth. She came back because the man she betrayed me for finally showed her what she was worth to him. It was nearly midnight when I heard banging on my door. I was already half asleep on the couch, the TV still glowing with some documentary I wasn't watching. At first, I thought it might be a neighbor or some late delivery mistake. But the second knock came harder. Unsteady. Uncontrolled. When I opened the door, there she was, Leslie. Soaked from the rain. Eyes glassy. Breath laced with vodka. Don't shut the door, she slurred, pushing past me. Please. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't say a word. She stumbled into the living room, dropped her purse, and turned to face me, arms dangling like a broken doll. I messed everything up, she said. He's moved to Chicago. Blocked me. Said I was too clingy. She laughed bitterly. I gave up everything for a man who won't even text me back. I stayed by the door, silent. Watching. Not saving. And you, she added, voice cracking, you were the only thing that ever felt real. And I crushed it. Her knees buckled slightly as she lowered herself onto the edge of the couch, the new one. The one she'd never sat on before. She ran her hand across the fabric, noticing the difference. This isn't our couch. No, I said, calm. It's mine. That moment hit her harder than any insult I could have thrown. She looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. The rearranged furniture. The lack of photos. No trace of her left. You've erased me, she whispered. No, I said. You did that. She started to cry, but it felt performative, like someone rehearsing sorrow, not truly feeling it. I thought I had time, she said. I thought you'd always be here. Then she stood, walked up to me slowly, and did something I never expected. She kissed me. It was soft. Desperate. Familiar. But I didn't kiss her back. She pulled away, eyes widening as if expecting something to ignite between us. Instead, I looked at her and calmly said, Go home, Leslie. I don't have a home, she whispered. I nodded slowly. I know. She left without another word. That night, I didn't sleep. But not because I was torn. Because for the first time since she walked out, I knew she couldn't hurt me anymore. And the saddest part? She didn't even realize that the man she wanted to come back to no longer existed. A few days after that night, I got one final message from Leslie. It was short. I'm leaving town. For good. Thank you for everything. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. And strangely, I didn't feel anger or sadness or even relief. I just felt still. As if my world had finally stopped spinning from her storm. Life didn't transform overnight, but something inside me had shifted. I stopped looking backward. I started waking up earlier, walking more, reading again. I began hosting small game nights with friends. I reconnected with people I hadn't seen in years. I even found myself laughing again, real laughter, not the hollow kind that feels like pretending. And then something unexpected happened. One Sunday, while volunteering at a community event for the local library, I met someone. Her name was Kate. She wasn't flashy or loud. She wasn't trying to be the center of attention. She was helping a little girl build a cardboard castle out of boxes and duct tape. There was something in her smile, gentle but grounded, that caught my attention immediately. We didn't fall into each other fast. There were no fireworks or melodramatic declarations. Instead, there were long walks. Quiet talks. A slow trust that built over time. She asked about my past once and only once. I told her enough for her to understand, but not so much that it poisoned the future. She listened without pity, without judgment. Sometimes she said you have to lose something heavy to realize how light you could feel. We didn't rush anything. We didn't need to. But with every small moment, her coffee order that matched mine, her texts just to check in, her silence that never felt awkward, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. And not just peace from the past. Peace with myself. One evening, months later, Kate and I were walking along the edge of the lake as the sun was setting. She looked at me and said, "Do you ever miss her?" I thought about it. "I don't miss who she became," I said. "And I don't miss who I was when I loved her." Kate nodded. "Then maybe you were never really meant to last." "No," I said with a small smile. "But maybe I was meant to learn how to last without her." That night, we sat by the water in comfortable silence. Not all stories end with revenge. Not all pain has to turn into fire. Sometimes healing is quiet. Sometimes victory looks like a man choosing peace over pride, stillness over chaos, honesty over illusion. And sometimes the greatest comeback is simply becoming the version of yourself you were always meant to be once you stop bleeding for someone who never knew how to love you. I gave her my whole heart. She chose someone else. And when she came back with nothing but regret, I had already moved on.